over the last few years, I've decided I'd better study the Constitution. I felt guilty for not reading it, and apparently I've made some discoveries that have never been published before. And so I was able to meet with Zeldin Nelson, the owner of the NCCS. They've printed 12 million of these copies of the Constitution, which I was using to study from. And I said, Zeldin, I think I found something within the Constitution that no one else has discovered, and it's important. Will you tell me if I'm right? And I shared those discoveries with him, and he looked at me after about a half hour of talking about it. He looked at me and he said, not only are you right, we've never heard them before, and we're going to publish them as well. To make a long story short, Ron Mann was deputy director of the bicentennial celebration of the Constitution for the United States government. He was also chief of staff for Ronald Reagan at the beginning, and was in the White House with Ronald Reagan for 4 years. President Reagan tried to get him to stay another 4, but he wanted to be with his family. And I've shared my concepts with him, and so now I have a new Constitution booklet that I say makes all others obsolete, and I'll explain why in a second, endorsed by Ron Mann. So I'm pretty excited about that, especially since when he was head of the bicentennial celebration of the Constitution for the government, he distributed over 50 million of these, and I was proud to make a correction. So after over 60 million have been printed, there will be 3 new corrections that I discovered and made in their index. No big deal, but it's kind of cool. So I was at a convention, and a friend let me stand in front of his booth, and I was able to stop people to promote my Constitution booklet. And I would say, hey, I've discovered something revolutionary within the Constitution, and I don't think it's ever been published, and I've been told by the owners of the NCCS that it is a true discovery. Would you let me share that discovery with you? And this gentleman pulled out his copy of the Constitution. It was all marked up, and he says, you think you can share something with me that I've never heard before in the Constitution? I said, yes, I do. And he said, give me your best shot. And I said, I have found the interpretation clause. I have found the clause within the Constitution that demands strict adherence to interpreting the document only in ways that support our God-given, our unalienable rights. It's one sentence. It's the 9th Amendment. And Congress has identified the first 10 amendments as not just the Bill of Rights or the first 10 amendments, but they have identified the first 10 amendments as further declaratory and restrictive clauses to the Constitution. And I said that interpretation clause, that governing clause, is one sentence. And to me, it's the voice of God. When I read it for the first time, it really hit me hard. One sentence. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. We can connect that to the Declaration of Independence and so on and so forth. That's one of the discoveries within the book. The Constitution is much more incredible than I think most people realize, and if we refer to the Constitution, if we'd been following the Constitution, we wouldn't have these problems that we're having today. Let's look at the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia be necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We don't even know what a militia is. Militia is not just about guns, it's about education. If we look in Article 1, Section 8, we can learn more about the militia and how the government has the power to raise funds to educate us all in the laws of the Union, which is the Constitution, which would solve all of our problems, including economic problems. I just want to make a quick comment. I've got the answers there that you were talking about. How do we fund government? It's in a book. I'll give you a free copy. My book, 7 Discoveries Everyone Should Know in the U.S. Constitution, Power to Fund the USA Without Taxation. Benjamin Franklin understood it, Abraham Lincoln understood it, and JFK understood it. If we just look to the Constitution, it supplies all the answers. Okay, what Mr. Meyer said was great. We need to understand the real problem. It's like, why are all these students upset about 17? I mean, that's horrible, but what about the 30 to 40 innocent lives that are being slaughtered every day because we drink alcohol? If they want our guns to be taken, maybe all the alcohol should be taken too. But no, the guns shouldn't be taken. Alcohol is not protected. It's not a Second Amendment right or a First Amendment right, anything like that. But Think about that. Let's start being reasonable in this country and realize that we're just listening to talking points from the media. Let's read the Constitution and understand what the real problems are in this country. It's interesting that in the Declaration of Independence, one of the complaints against the king was that there were standing armies that were more powerful than the civil powers. And so if we look at the Second Amendment again and think about militia, Article 1, Section 8 not only gives the power to discipline the militia, which is educate, the power to raise money to educate every citizen in the laws of the Union, which is the Constitution, which is basically the Congress has the power to pay for your education in the Constitution. But they also have the power to arm every citizen and train every citizen in the safe use and control of the weapons that they are capable of safely storing and safely using in case they are needed. And so back to Thomas Jefferson, the comment was made, Mr. Myers, the key is education. If I go back to Washington, D.C., I would go back with the motivation to help education of 534 others. 19 trillion, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt, taxes and interest from shore to shore. The Federal Reserve is the company store. I was able to ask Donald Trump personally on MSNBC at a convention 3 questions pertaining to the Federal Reserve. Laura Rothman, an analyst on Fox News, was sort of making fun of Ron Paul about the $1.6 trillion debt. And she said, you know, Ron, that's not fictitious, because that's what he was saying, that we shouldn't have to pay back $1 trillion. It was created out of thin air. And she said, you know that it's not fictitious. That belongs to the financial markets. And what he should have said but didn't is, you've just proven my point, because the financial markets are privately owned. And so I would say Donald Trump he has my second book called The Devil in the Constitution and How to Kick Him Out. I presented this book to Steve Moore, his chief economics advisor. And if I go to Washington, D.C., believe me, 534 people will hear about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Loy.
So the traditional meaning of conservatism would be holding to traditional values and attitudes. And I guess that would mean holding to the traditional values and attitudes of our founders, who had a biblical base and beliefs, and the Constitution came from those biblical beliefs. It's so weird that we would have a separation. It seems that today conservatives are considered more constitutional, and the liberals are more, oh, it's an old dead document, men governing from the dead, and we don't need the Constitution. We're smarter than they are now, so let's not worry about the Constitution. Read it, refer to it, understand it. So I think it's stupid that we have those terms, liberal or conservative. It should be, look, we have a rule of law, and we should understand it. Our civics classes and education have completely failed us. How many of us have even read the Constitution completely within the last year? How many of us refer to it or would refer to it on a daily basis if we were in Washington, D.C.? Or would we think, oh, we don't want to refer to the dead. We're the living. We know more than they do. I don't think we're smarter here than Jefferson and any of the others that penned, through inspiration, some of these incredible things. And I say the Constitution is so absolutely incredible. If we just start reading it, take a pen, and underline things that are exciting, we'll find a whole new life. Thank you. Okay, hopefully we will read the U.S. Senate oath to the Constitution. Hopefully we'll read the Constitution before we actually take office. That would be a good thing. And here is the oath. I do solemnly swear to solemnly swear or affirm, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office in which I'm about to enter, so help me God. That is the safeguard. That is the fail-safe. My gosh, how about we read the Constitution and use the Constitution to answer these questions before the next debate? Thank you. We need to streamline good immigrants coming in, and we need to make it impossible, as much as possible, to keep the bad ones out. It's really that simple. It's turned into a pawn for political purposes. The progressives The Democrats want the votes, and they don't care about anything else, basically. They'll even harbor criminals, protect the criminals. Article 1, Section 8 gives the Congress the power to create money, issue money, and spend it under constitutional guidelines. If done in that way, it will protect the value of currencies. Amendment 5, the last line, this further declaratory and restrictive clause, this little fine print right there, you cannot have your private property taken from you for public use without just compensation. That's taxes. You cannot have your money taken from you for public use without just compensation. Amendment 5 nullifies the tax clauses. We don't need taxes at all. If we were to make this constitutional correction, that one point alone, money, get our money back, it would begin to solve all of the problems. Money, ill-gotten money, has done more damage to this country than anything else. Benjamin Franklin proved, JFK, Abraham Lincoln funded the Civil War with 450 million United States dollars. It sparked the Industrial Revolution. If we went to a debt-free currency, which is what I'm talking about, we would have an industrial revolution unlike anything we could imagine. It would solve all the economic problems. Businesses would be paying immigrants to come in from other countries. There would be no unemployment. The colonies that were doing it right had no unemployment. They went to England, unemployment all over the place. Yeah, it's great that we could all be one, and we should be. If we were all one, the controversies in Washington would be all positive. It'd be, hey, here's a great idea, but here's something maybe a better idea, instead of such opposites, such poles. So some of the great statesmen I think of have been church leaders, like President David O. McKay, as it was mentioned, Ezra Taft Benson, and Elder L. Tom Perry. And those three presidents of the church, or prophets, or leaders of the church, shared the same quote that I want to share with you. That's real quick. Next to being one and worshiping God, there is nothing in this world upon which this church should be more united than in. Now, if you're not familiar with that statement, what could that possibly be? What could it possibly be that we should be so united in? Let me read it again. Next to being one and worshiping God, there is nothing in this world upon which this church should be more united than in upholding and defending the Constitution of the United States. So, what an appeal to study the document and try to understand it. And what I did was, when I read it through and kept reading it through, I skipped over the stuff I didn't understand. I would just find nuggets, just little things like, wow, this pops out, and I understood it. And I'd keep marking it up. And every time I read the document through, I find something new. It seems like it's just mind-boggling. It's like the scriptures. Before I went on my mission, I started reading the New Testament. I hadn't really read it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is stuff I hear in the Mormon church, the LDS church, in Sunday school, and sacrament meeting. These are, my gosh, I had no idea that there was so much of what I had been taught as an LDS young person growing up as there was in the New Testament. Okay, well, as a U.S. Senator, we shouldn't support any funding of anything that's not specifically enumerated in Article 1, Section 8. A little example here, in the preamble of the Constitution, the word promote the general welfare of the people is there, but in Article 1, Section 8, it gives us an idea of what the definition of promote is. Promote the arts and sciences by allowing those artists, those scientists to keep and own their copyrights. They're not supposed to be funded by government. That's redistribution of wealth. As many of you probably saw, our Secretary of State, who was running for president, defend and basically promote partial birth abortion. Well, I was appalled by that, but then I looked up a partial birth abortion video, and that horror will stay in my mind the rest of my life. I couldn't believe it. There are 35 approximately, last time I checked, abortions in Utah daily, according to statistics, and they're both of the abortion clinics are in Salt Lake County. Wouldn't it be great if we could go to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, our U.S. Supreme Court Justice, and say, gosh, you actually signed a contract to support our Lord, you atheist, and have her and be able to prove that? Well, guess what? She did. The God of the Constitution, the God of the Declaration of Independence, and the God of this country is revealed to us in the Constitution. Article 7, second clause tells us who the God is, and it's our Lord using the Christian calendar. That's the second clause in Article 7. If we take an oath to the Constitution of the United States, we're taking an oath to the Articles. We're taking an oath to Article 7. We're taking an oath to the second clause. We're taking an oath to support our Lord. The great thing about our Lord is he doesn't demand everyone believe in him. He's not going to chop our heads off if we don't believe, but we need to support his principles, which are contained in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 it is the only way we can do anything. It's permission. It doesn't mean if it's not there, we can do it. Thank you. It's so interesting that the Constitution demands that we don't just take an oath to the Constitution, but we take a binding oath to the Constitution. There are laws in states that require felony or misdemeanor penalties be connected to breaking the oath of office or oath to the Constitution. We have a Supreme Court. The Supreme Court justices take two oaths. They take an oath to they take a judicial oath, and then they also take an oath to the Constitution. But the judicial oath also includes the oath to the Constitution. So I can't, I can't say enough about how incredible this document is, and I'm still learning every time I pick it up, and how amazing it is how it has the answers to all the problems. It really does. And going back to the tax thing, it sounds so crazy. The less tax there is in this country, the more prosperity there is. And it's proven that the lower the taxes are, the more prosperity, and then the more charitable giving as a result of that. And so if we could get back to a tax-free system like the colonies did for a little while, and like Lincoln started to do, and JFK started with 4.5 billion United States dollars, if we could get back to a tax-free system with constitutionally controlled spending so that we don't lose the value of our currencies, charitable giving would go through the roof, and there would never be a problem for a woman needing help, or a man needing help, or a young person needing help in this country. It's like we have followed a problem of fire with gasoline. It's like going into a home that's the basement is being flooded, and we run in with sponges, and because that's the perception. We see this water, we've got to get rid of the water. But the wise person who has studied and understood the issues and understood the principles behind it, he's not going to go in with a mop and sponges. He's going to go right to the valve, and he's going to shut it off. And that's what we need. We need education. It's so important. Alicia, if you win this seat, start studying the Constitution as much as you can. I promise you will see things. You will become even more brilliant than you are right now. You'll be a shining star of constitutional principles and sound government that provides the way for prosperity. We're talking prosperity like we've never imagined. We've been able to experience a little bit in this country from following the Constitution to certain degrees, but the prosperity that we would have if we followed the Constitution would blow our minds. It would be beyond our imagination. We would be paying for immigrants to come in. We would the process for good people, just people that want to work and they don't want to be parasites. And here, I'll hold my 60-second thing up here. Can I do that now? Great, we've got 60 seconds. It would be unbelievable, but right now what we're doing is we're fighting the flood with sponges, and unless we shut that valve off, there will never be an end to it. We have an economic system that, in order for the currency to increase in this country to keep up with economic growth and population growth, we have to borrow that money into existence from central bankers, private individuals that literally have the power because of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 to create our currency. And not just, they're not managing the economy, they own the currency. They loan trillions of dollars to us. We have to pay it back plus interest, plus they're spending trillions. I met with Congressman Grayson. I set up The pledge is great. We have a pledge, we have an oath. Article 6 of the Constitution states the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislators and all executive and judicial officers, that means attorneys, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. And then if we look at the if we look at the oath, which we will have to take as U.S. senators, and we have a choice whether to swear or affirm, and we should understand what that is, and we need to understand what the oath is as opposed to anyway, I'll just read it real quickly. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office in which I'm about to enter. So help me God. That's our pledge, isn't it? Great, thanks. It's easy for people to get trade deficit confused with debt. China loaned us $1 trillion. Where did they get that? They didn't get that from trade. No, they loaned it. They borrowed it from the Federal Reserve System. That's public information. It's money laundering. They borrow $1 trillion from the Federal Reserve, jack up the interest rate a little bit, and then loan it to us to legitimize the debt. There are multi-trillionaires walking around. I was able to meet with Alan Grayson, who had been in congressional hearings. As you can see him on YouTube, a Democrat, a friend. And he said he knows of personally multi-trillionaires walking around, people with $1 trillion+ portfolios because of their connection with central banking, which is connected to the Federal Reserve. The U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing creates our paper money, but they have one exclusive customer. I called and talked to someone on the phone, and they candidly said, yes, we have one customer we can only sell this money to. And I said, who? And they said, the Federal Reserve System. At what price? I said. And they said, at the cost of paper and ink. That's about $99.85 profit per $100 bill. So who's getting the profit? I asked Congressman Alan West, great man, U.S. House of Representatives. Who owns the profit on a $99.85 profit when a $100 bill is printed? And he gave me a very straight answer, an honest answer. He said, I don't know. Education is the answer. Education is the key. Let's get educated. Send me to Washington, D.C., and I will start an educational fire. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and God bless America. God bless the Constitution of the United States, and may God help us understand as we begin to read and study even more the Constitution of the United States, the 10 Amendments, which are further declaratory and restrictive clauses. I don't even like the term Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. God bless you all, and thank you for being here and inviting us all. Thank you.